And go. BFM 89.9, good morning, I'm Nadia Hassan sitting in for Sharat Kutan, and this is your morning headlines. Continuing the theme of yesterday, including water everywhere, but hey, you have to ration it. That actually dominates most of the front headlines, but thankfully not as extensively as yesterday. But the interesting story to put up is actually basically the Malay Mail, and is talking about how the MB caused confusion. And now the issue is that Syabas has now come out to actually answer Tan Sri Khalid's answer about whether or not the water rationing, and it's become a game of he said in a sense. And then Syabas said they warned MB Khalid over the shortage of supplies, and Khalid's proposal, according to them, would actually cut off water to about more than one-third of Selangor, KL and Putrajaya. On Khalid's side, he said that they also said his move was confusing against the Provision of Water Act. Then Khalid fired back and said, hey, Syabas failed in preparing the scheduled rationing plan despite repeat requests from the state government. So it's become this kind of game in between as who is going to break the stalemate. And at the end of the day, neither of us have anything to kind of drink. And the problem always with this is the water rationing said it was supposed to start yesterday. Now it says it's starting today. So what's the issue is that nobody seems to know what's going on. And because of that, you do not inform the public enough, and you have all this flip-flopping. Come up with one, at least. And so at least we can be better prepared. But Malaysians being Malaysians, of course, the first thing that happens when they hear this crisis, they go and buy tongs, of course. And these are the pictures that you see in a lot of the front covers, a lot of plastic buckets, a lot of baldies, a lot of rationing up as people kind of panic. In fact, some people are probably thinking, hey, that show on TV called Doomsday Preppers actually had something right to think about. And so if you are the provision shop that's been selling all these tongs, hey, it's your lucky day. And of course, in response to the weather, we're very famous for knowing that when you want people to stop the rain, you call the bomos, especially for big sporting events. So what do you do when you want the rain? Easy, you pray. And that's the front cover of Sinar Harian today, where they have this sort of lovingly backlit silhouette. I think it's a man kind of picture, I can't tell with the cropping, of how they're hoping prayers in open areas in order to bring the rain. Whether it works is going to be another issue. But in the meantime, the Meteorological Society is actually going to do cloud seeding, and hopefully we get some relief from the heat we've been feeling. But speaking of feeling the heat, the sun, although there are nice pictures of people with plastic buckets and everything, it goes with this. On his blog, Prime Minister Datuk Sri Najib actually talks about ignoring the extremists. He calls on the media to ignore all these sort of fringe groups who they say are disrupting harmony with what they do and what they say. And he wants to preserve harmony in the country. He wants Malaysians to inspire each other with feel-good stories. Ideally, he wants people to be a Hallmark channel. He talks about how he wants pictures of the Malay cop helping the Chinese old lady to cross the street. You know, whether that exists above stock footage, I won't really know, but the fact that he calls something so specific bears to mind really Hallmark channel. And this other little comment that I'm sure is going to get a lot of interest in the social sphere is that he says he was the first, mind you, to call for national reconciliation after GE13. I mean, to be fair, it's great. Unity is great. We all need unity. It's at a time in the country when you can see the fractures even more. But it's always a case of not just doing what you say, but do what you do. In the end, what you have to do is lead by example. You know, and I think that it's more than, it goes beyond just saying you want unity. It's like patriotism. You cannot impose patriotism on people. It needs to be inspired, and unity is the same way. So in the end, don't do as you say, but do as you do. Your actions will actually eventually prove louder than your words. Now, this other little story we have to put up that's also on the front pages of the headlines. Funnily enough, if any of you read Harian Metro, you know that it's basically a bit more sensationalist. Let's talk about plastic surgeons and the lives of starlets. In fact, that is one of the stories today. But funnily enough, both them and Berita Harian share a similar headline, talking about this sad story of this maid who actually went very, very postal and then killed her two charges, a 5-month-year-old boy, a 5-year-old boy, and their grandmother found them really, really sad states. But the fact of the matter is that they actually share a headline. So does that mean that the mainstream papers are becoming more tabloidy, or the tabloids becoming more mainstream? You have to think about that. And a couple of other stories to think about also is Utosan finishing up with something that's a little bit of a delayed reaction. We talked about this yesterday, about the death threat by President Pertubuhan Hak Belia Malaysia for Shen Yi on his blog. And he talks about the Red Bean Army being cabal, and that's the word for the day, which is cabal. Essentially, it means fortified, although if you tell me, it makes me think of a tank as well as the White Stripes Song 7 Nation Army. But essentially, yesterday's story, he said he received a lot of death threats and nobody seemed to care. Teresa Kok was given a lot of support by Malaysia Kini and so forth after the whole SAP threats, and he says, why doesn't anybody care about me? Well, friend, you've actually gotten a big headline on Utosan, so hopefully that sets the matter to rest. But again, it's a case of death threats are never right, no matter what party they're gone against. So I think they should be treated with equal weight. You should care. It's not the way to go. Seriously, stop it, people. And finally, the last one, talking about Malaysia Kini had their office splashed with red paint, and according to some stories, they were given either a live duck or a dead duck, regardless of the stories. But there was the one thing that seems to be the same is that it had a picture of Teresa Kok on it, and their editor-in-chief Stephen Gunn said it's likely due to the extensive coverage of the Teresa Kok issue. And this still happens, and yet people are calling for unity. Is this unity? You know, you have to ask. You have these people who are reacting this way. Death threats, dead or live ducks. You know, it's like, is this what you need to foster unity in the country? So, with my closing remarks, don't do as you say, but do as you do. Lead by example. I'm Nadia Hassan, and that's been your morning headlines on BFM 89.9.